everyone, under sunshine and warmth. Whew, what a pretty day for today. Welcome to Storm Team 2 Beyond the Forecast. Hopefully you're enjoying today because things are going to be changing, including starting tonight and for the rest of the week. I'm meteorologist Jennifer Stanonis.
And I'm Lauren Maroney.
We got a few things we're tracking. A little more active
Quite
week.
A few things.
Especially for tomorrow. Looks like later tomorrow into the evening. Looks like probably the most active. Also just a rainy, warm week expected too.
Pretty much every single day, even including today through Easter, has the chance for some rain, which is really not what you want, but we do at least have those mild temperatures with it, so at least it's not chilly and raining. That's the worst combination.
And some dry slots too in there to work with, so that's good news. Although I'm hoping tomorrow we don't have too much of a dry slot in terms of sunshine, because then that'll provide for additional instability for that front coming through.
It looks like we are dry, but it does seem to at least stay cloudy, so maybe it'll, I mean, it does look like those temperatures are spiking quite a bit, though.
Meteorologically, we're like, okay, let's get some cloud coverage, so that'll be good for in terms of lower impact for later tomorrow. But I'll take you through it. As we look right now, we have a pretty nice day. Hopefully you can get out and enjoy, maybe get to that Broadway market in preparation for Easter weekend this weekend, because today looks like a pretty nice day and with the warmth, because we're going to be tracking a lot of rain for pretty much the rest of the week, rounds of it. So right now we are enjoying pretty nice conditions, some sunshine out there. We are tracking a little bit of rain. Looks like mostly just light, a little batch over here, just brief, moving into Chautauqua County. That's about it though. As we zoom in here, Sherman, Ripley, some light rain along the 90 there into Harmony, Ellery, but this is brief. Most of today will be just fine. And look at these temperatures right now, feeling so nice. We have even some 60s right now. We're still at 58 for Buffalo and for Clarence, 60 for Grand Island, 62 Niagara Falls. Even some mid 60s as you head to Angola, Dunkirk, Warsaw, Angelica, Wellsville, Batavia. So very nice out there right now. Enjoy. I know, Lauren, I kind of want to sit out a little longer this morning with my cup of coffee in the backyard, but life continues to move on and had to head to work to continue to bring you guys updates, as we will for the rest of tonight and into tomorrow as we'll be tracking some of that active weather. Right now, though, we have just a little breeze out there. Wind speeds at 22 miles per hour in Buffalo, also Dunkirk. 32 for that current wind gust in Buffalo, and for Batavia, 30, 33 for Dunkirk. And we're under that mostly sunny sky downtown. Oh, so nice. Temperatures warm. Most places in those mid to low 60s for today, right around 60. We will have those clouds increasing, thickening up as we progress through the day, and most areas not going to be dealing with rain until probably the tail end of the evening commute, mid to later evening, and we'll be tracking some rounds of heavy rain too. We'll continue to be warm for tonight as well, and right on into tomorrow, before that cold front comes through for later tomorrow and produces some of that extra active weather in terms of some rounds of rain early and maybe some thunderstorms late in the day. So let's start with future look showing right now. A couple of those little isolated showers popping up. You can see those picking up into afternoon time for future look. However, most spots going to be dry. It's as we head into especially the tail end of the evening commute and as we progress through the evening, we'll see a better chance. Some of these rain showers, heavy downpours, some of these embedded thunderstorms, rounds of it will continue right into the overnight and into tomorrow morning, as we'll have a warm front coming through. So very warm air mass in place for the first part of your Tuesday. Some of the timing of this does show a brief lull in the precipitation, tail end of the Tuesday morning commute, potentially late morning into the early afternoon. Meteorologically, we're hoping we don't get too much sunshine to further fuel the instability at the surface before that cold front comes through. So that'll kind of make or break just how much severe weather we get. And that's one of the parameters we'll be looking at. And as we look at the afternoon, later afternoon into the evening, probably get another batch of some rain and some thunderstorms, potentially some stronger storms with that, and into the evening as well, as we'll be tracking that cold front with some of the severe thunderstorm activity ahead of it and along it. So note that. Then we do have just more nuisance, but still some rain as we head into Wednesday. Might be a dry start to the day, but then we'll continue to have some of those rain showers. So it's Tuesday, especially the second half of the day, that we'll be monitoring. But also some rounds of heavy rain even for early Tuesday morning. So we have that weather impact alert for the day Tuesday, and especially as we head into late afternoon and into the evening, weather impact alert as we'll continue to monitor conditions for that isolated strong to severe storm, maybe a few of them. Main threat, damaging winds, and some large hail potentially. So just heads up, there'll be slower travel out there, some ponding on area roadways and poor drainage areas. Could be dealing with some flood issues, isolated wind damage, isolated power outages, just depending on the strength of some of these thunderstorms. So just note Tuesday, especially later afternoon into the evening, is a day that just know where sturdy shelter is in case you just need to get indoors and just let any strong storms move on through before you head back outside. Storm Prediction Center does have our area under a slight marginal risk, so it's level 1 and 2, so it's still the lower end of the risk levels, but main threats again, damaging winds, large hail, some flooding, downpours potentially. So you can see our entire area is at risk of seeing some of these stronger to severe storms. So I'll reiterate, main threat, those damaging winds, best chance of that. Secondly, the large hail. And thirdly, it is a very low risk, but not zero, but a 2% chance of a mainly isolated weak tornado. So that'll be later in the day, Tuesday into the evening. So we'll continue to have eyes in the skies, you as well, continue to check in on updates. Wanted to show you for the instability outlook, several severe weather parameters we look at in terms of just how intense these storms can be, what kind of atmosphere are these storms working with as they move in. We look at shear, which will have some of that, and also CAPE. So that's convective available potential energy. And locally, it does look like we're going to have some of that, enough for some of these thunderstorms to work with to maybe go severe, especially later afternoon and into the evening. So that's the time frame we're really going to be focusing on very closely, as we could be dealing with some of these active severe thunderstorms, enough for them to go severe. And what we look at, we want those parameters to show that that severe thunderstorm will, or at least that thunderstorm will be able to tilt. And so what we look at is for those updrafts and downdrafts to be adjacent to each other, so the storm actually can continue to intensify and create that large hail core and potentially other severe weather out of it. So that's something we're going to continue to closely monitor, because we do have enough instability in place potentially for some of these storms to become severe. So that's something, heads up, later tomorrow and into the evening. We're also going to be very warm. That's also going to help fuel the instability at the surface, very warm conditions. And for those lows too, to start the day off, I mean in the 50s, highs for your Tuesday near 70, probably around 70 for some locations as well. Batavia into Gowanda, close to that for most spots. Buffalo, probably nicely in those 60s. And then that front comes through, we do drop those temperatures, but still 40s to start your Wednesday off, and probably those 40s for those highs. But we're going to be pretty warm, especially for your Tuesday ahead of that cold front. And then behind that, we'll cool off slightly, but still above average, you can see, for Wednesday. We're well above average, by the way, for tomorrow. And then we're at least in those 50s to low 60s for the rest of the week and into the weekend. Average this time of year, by the way, upper 40s. So we're going to be well above that by about 10 plus degrees. For the rest of the week and into the Easter weekend as well, we're going to maintain those above average temperatures, but also pretty wet week. We have rounds of rain pretty much for the rest of the week and into the weekend, and especially some heavy, heavy downpours will arrive even starting later tonight into tomorrow morning, and of course the second half of tomorrow and into your Tuesday night, where we have that weather impact alert continuing. So also heads up, warm week, but wet too. At least though we'll have some dry slots in there, so beneficial to continue to check in for updates as we'll track this, as we'll be dealing with this more active weather pattern in terms of low pressure systems just continuing to move across our region. So of course, we'll be closely monitoring tomorrow's activity with that warm front early and then that cold front late in the day. We'll continue to have Wednesday, more rain at times, waves of rain, as we'll have still another system coming through. Doesn't look like as intense though in terms of severe weather, just going to be kind of a soggy day for a portion of it, and also into Thursday as well. So have your rain gear handy, going to need it this week. Rain boots and etc. Tonight's forecast, we'll have those clouds increasing. Have to be pretty nice, really nice day actually, and warm. We'll have low temperatures near 50, and rain comes in heavy at times, especially Later evening, probably some thunderstorms overnight. May wake you up, might hear that. And very warm right on into tomorrow. We have that weather impact alert for your Tuesday. Tracking those potentially strong to severe storms, at least an isolated one. We'll have to see just how much instability in place and if we get some of those sunny breaks early to see if we get a few of them and where. So heads up, area-wide weather impact alert for Tuesday into Tuesday night. Wednesday and Thursday, we'll have still milder conditions with rain shower chances in that 7-day forecast. You can see pretty much every day we'll have some rain for some of the day, and that'll continue the rest of the week into the Easter weekend. We'll be dealing with at least some rain chances, and temperatures though will still be on the milder side with the highs and the lows. So that's some good news. It doesn't look like we'll have to pull out our, winter gear too much. Maybe there might be a couple mornings where we dip down into the 30s is all.
No,
so maybe just a winter jacket, but for the most part, I mean, highs and lows are going to be nice, mostly just the rain jacket.
Yeah, no, I mean, at least temperature-wise, we are kind of staying on that mild side. It does kind of have that spring feel, even with those rain chances. It kind of, to try to put a positive spin on it, it does feel more optimistic, even though it is a lot of rain, and we've already had a lot of rain in March.
Yeah, the ground's pretty saturated.
Yeah, we're 2 inches over the monthly average already. And we are going to get a couple more inches, I think, before the month is over.
I'm just thinking in my backyard, it's like already kind of becoming a mud pit with the puppies. So I got the leashes ready. There might be more walks in between those waves of rain.
Yeah, thankfully there are those, dry times when you can at least, have dry skies when you're walking the dog, even though the ground is not going to be dry anytime soon.
And at this point, tomorrow looks like the most active weather day. So that's what we'll continue to closely monitor, heads up on that. And then the rest of the week as of now just looks like more just normal rain activity.
More periods of rain. It's just you're going to want that umbrella. You're going to want the rain gear with you. But there will also be dry times. So it's not all bad, even though the 7-day looks very depressing.
At least we're warm.
At least we're warm.
And then you're going to talk more coming up after the break.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit just about the type of weather systems that we do talk about. We throw around terms low pressure, high pressure, cold front, warm front. I'm going to kind of break down what all of those things are and what that means for your weather coming up right after this.
Welcome back. Okay, so Lauren, you're going to talk about highs, lows, warm fronts, cold fronts, which we're going to see like all that in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, so kind of a lot to break down, just kind of giving you a more meteorological overview of these types of terms that we use so often. So we always talk about low pressure and high pressure. You've probably heard people say low pressure, the L is for lousy, and the H in high pressure is for happy. That's kind of how people like to think about it, because whenever we have low pressure systems, typically we are dealing with some sort of precipitation. This time of year, it can even bring that severe weather, whereas high pressure, the air tends to be a lot more stable and it's quiet. But just to go to bat a little bit for low pressure, high pressure can also be a bit of a mess, because if you have high pressure over you for too long, the air gets really stale, and that's when you start to have air quality issues. And also high pressure is what's responsible for those heat domes that can create heat waves in the summer. So both have their disadvantages, if you will. Let's talk a little bit about low pressure, also cyclone. You have the cyclonic flow. So that is where the air generally moves in a counterclockwise direction, more inward toward that center of low pressure, and it's associated with rising air. Rising air is, of course, when you have that unstable air, so it keeps rising. That's typically also how we get those thunderstorms, which we are going to have later on this week. High pressure, you have anticyclonic flow, where the air moves in a clockwise direction and tends to move outward away from the high pressure, because air tends to move from high pressure to low pressure, at least it tries to. And a lot of this is caused by the uneven heating of the earth, which is affected by the sun angle. Areas that get more direct sunlight tend to warm up. Also, talking about how ground warms different from water. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, kind of like a microcosm of how high versus low pressure works. And obviously high pressure is associated with that sinking air. That's how you kind of have stable air. So basically you have warmer air at the bottom, and then you have colder air at the bottom and then warm air that acts like a lid that just holds that cold air in place. That's how you can get very stale air. A high pressure system is what was responsible for the London fog in 1952. So high pressure can be a real issue. And again, air tends to want to flow from high pressure to low pressure. So I want to kind of talk about a very small aspect of that, which always helped me understand it when I was learning about this in school. So think about how onshore winds work. You know, you're on the beach, you're on the lake shore. Obviously the sun, it warms the sand, and the sand gets very warm. It does warm the water, but water does not warm as quickly as the sand does. So when you have the colder air over here, this kind of creates the colder, denser air that is your high pressure, whereas that warmer, less dense air on the land is your low pressure. So you get that onshore wind, the air wants to flow toward the land. But then once it's nighttime, the sand loses a lot of its warmth and it gets quite chilly. And then the ocean is actually the relatively warmer thing. So then that's your high pressure, that's your low pressure, and then the air wants to flow actually offshore, which is just kind of a fun thing that I like to think about. Okay, so now let's talk about cold fronts. Basically, it is when colder air is encroaching upon an area of relatively warmer air. And cold air is, of course, more dense and it's pretty strong, and it forces that warm air pretty directly up. Often when we're talking about severe weather like we are with what is going to be happening on Tuesday, when we're looking at the severe potential, that is going to be happening with the passage of the cold front. We are looking also at the chance for some isolated thunderstorms with the passage of the warm front, which I'll talk about in a moment. But a lot of the times it's that cold front that can be a real mess because it really just forces that warm air right up, and that warm air, because it is so much warmer than that cold air that is encroaching upon the area, it just keeps rising, and that's how you get those tall cumulonimbus clouds that really create a mess. Also, it's kind of fun, I like to think it's fun, to try to spot a cold front on a map, and you do kind of see that divide right there where the cold air would be. We have these warm 80s kind of across the southeast, and then you have the 50s and 40s just to the north and west of that. So that's kind of, you can typically spot when you look at the temperatures, and especially if you have an outlook, just kind of how that cold front is setting up in an area. But then we also have warm fronts. So warm air is not as, dominant as that cold front, so it tends to just slide over the relatively cooler air as it's pushing its way through, which does still lead to obviously the rising of air. We are tracking, rain and thunderstorms that are going to come along with the passage of our warm front early tomorrow, but it's not quite as drastic of a lift, not quite as severe, and it's not as much of a temperature change usually with that. And then you can also see that warm front. This is going to be on Thursday. You see those, again, those warm 80s and then kind of those cooler temperatures just off to the north of it. That's sort of that warm front. But then you can also get a stationary front. That sometimes it kind of looks like a warm front when you're looking at it on the map, but it's basically just because that front is not moving. The warm air and cold air, typically when you have a warm front, that warm air is kind of pushing that cooler air along, and it does move so that front isn't just staying stalled over one area. But sometimes you have a stationary front where that cold air and that warm air are really just kind of butting heads with each other. So it doesn't move a lot. So this is where you can get hours, if not days worth of precipitation. So a stationary front can be quite dangerous, not just because obviously you do have that rising air, but because you can just get so much rainfall out of it because it's not moving. Not that it's not moving, but it's moving very slowly, which allows it to just dump a lot of precipitation over an area. And then you also have an occluded front. So that we don't see them as much on the map, sometimes just because they're more annoying to draw when I'm drawing all the fronts. But that tends to happen toward the end of the life of a low and a front. But what basically happens is cold fronts move faster than warm fronts. So eventually that cold front kind of catches up with that warm front, forces all of the warm air up, and then it's actually away from the ground. So that warm air is aloft. It's no longer at the ground, and that kind of creates the occluded front. So just kind of to take a look at what that is. So these are isobars. These are lines of equal pressure. That's how we can kind of try to identify where those areas of low pressure are. So you have a low right here. You have your cold front, and this here is a stationary front. If you're curious, that is an area of high pressure, but we're going to continue talking about the lows. Going to advance it, but also if it's a warm front. So this is kind of what an occluded front looks like, where you see that cold front advanced enough, and then you have that purple where it just kind of forces those fronts to sort of meet, and it just pushes up that warmer air that you have. Another thing that can kind of act very similarly to a front, though it's a little different, is a dry line. You typically see dry lines around this time of year around that Texas, Oklahoma area. And what that is, instead of having differences between temperatures, you have differences between the moisture, because you have kind of the eastern area of Texas that is getting that very warm, moist air from the Gulf, but then you're also getting very warm, dry air from areas like Arizona and New Mexico. So that also creates a sort of lift, because even though people, whenever it's very humid and you have really moist air, people talk about, oh, the air is like so thick, it's so heavy. Moist air is actually less dense than dry air, so that kind of acts similarly, and that gives the lift. And the ingredients that you need for severe storms are moisture, instability, and lift, and that is what you get with a dry line kind of in spades. So that is where you can get those really, really severe storms that kind of set up around Tornado Alley.
Maybe
from
get those,
that dry line.
Yeah, the dry line and with cold fronts. And
oh, absolutely.
I mean, they get all of that
one.
Yeah, it is impressive sometimes. I do like, it's so neat when, after we've gone to meteorology school, you study all about the sky, and then you actually go out and then you can see the weather that's coming without even really looking at the weather maps.
Yeah.
Like, especially with a warm front, I feel like that's some of the easiest. Obviously, a strong cold front, because you can sometimes get those shelf clouds, but a warm front, because like you're saying, the warm air rises over that cooler air, so then you start seeing those high cirrus clouds first, and then the alto, medium level clouds, and it's cool. You can just see the warm front. I always show the kids, I'm like, oh, do you see what that is? That's a warm front, and this is how you can tell just by looking at the sky.
There you go. Yeah, and I also forgot to mention with the occluded front, where those kind of three fronts meet, that's like the triple point, and that's where you can really get that bad instability and lift, and that is where you might see some tornadoes, especially in areas like Tornado Alley. But that is kind of a brief overview of some meteorological terms that we use so much. We'll be back with more Beyond the Forecast after this.
Yes. Welcome back. So we're going to have some very warm air in place for pretty much the rest of today, tonight, tomorrow, and then even maintaining, mild conditions for the rest of the week, but also some rain chances. We'll be tracking the severe weather potential for tomorrow, and then on and off rain, but warmth for the rest of the week.
Yeah, even our cool down on Wednesday doesn't look so bad. We'll be in maybe like the mid to low 40s, which isn't that far off from average.
And not bad for the first day of April.
That is going to be the first day of April, and we're going to kind of look at, on Wednesday, what April looks like climatologically and what hopefully we can expect out of what we're hoping is going to be a quieter April than this end of March has been.
Yes, so we'll see you back here 12:30 on Wednesday.